My father didn't lower his voice when he said it. He announced it like a commandment: hand over your penthouse to your brother. It was supposed to be a wedding toast, but the ballroom went silent. Then his hand met my face so hard the string quartet missed a note. 200 guests watched as champagne froze midair, and my cheek burned red. My mother's whisper cut sharper than the slap, "You've humiliated us." I just smiled. Calm, cold, certain. Because right then they didn't realize they hadn't just slapped their daughter, they'd created their biggest mistake. Before I tell you what happened next, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to stand alone against your own family? People always said my family looked perfect. And maybe we did from the outside. A father with a firm handshake and a tailored suit. A mother who never raised her voice or left the house without lipstick. A son everyone adored even when he failed. And then there was me, the daughter who made it on her own, but never quite belonged. I'm Diana Brooks, 31, a senior software architect who built my career from scratch. No family connections, no trust fund, just code, caffeine, and an iron will. While my brother Carlos was crashing one business idea after another, my parents were wiring him money, covering his messes, praising him for his ambition. When I worked double shifts to pay rent, my father said, "That's what builds character." He loved saying that. Character. As if endurance was the same as love. I left home at 20, swearing I'd never ask for help again. For years, I didn't. I lived in a studio with paper-thin walls typed until my fingers cramped ate ramen, while Carlos posted photos from Cabo. And yet, when I finally bought my penthouse, the one thing that made every sleepless night worth it, my parents barely reacted. My father only said it's too big for one person. I should have known that wasn't an observation. It was foreshadowing. Carlos was always the future. My parents said he had potential even as he sank deeper into debt. Every family dinner turned into a strategy meeting about how to support his next step. My mother Helen smiled sweetly while maneuvering every conversation to make me feel guilty for my success. "You've always had such a strong work ethic," she'd say, slicing into her steak. "Maybe you could help your brother get on his feet." Help meant fix. Fix meant sacrifice. So when Carlos announced he was marrying Vanessa, a polished woman with an influencer smile and eyes that could size up a price tag faster than a person I played along, I showed up, smiled for photos, even gave a toast. I wanted to believe maybe this time they'd see me as part of the family, not the resource funding it. The wedding was everything they'd ever wanted: chandeliers, champagne towers, a rented orchestra. The family name finally sparkled again. I remember standing near the dance floor, clutching my glass, pretending not to notice my father's eyes on me across the room, calculating, weighing. Then he stood up, raised his glass, and made his toast. And that's when everything broke. The morning after the wedding, my cheeks still throbbed. A faint outline of my father's hand lingered like a brand I couldn't wash off. The city outside moved on as if nothing had happened, traffic, humming rain, tapping the glass, but something inside me had shifted. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Cousins, aunts, numbers I hadn't seen in years. Each message carried the same tone: disappointment disguised as concern. "You shouldn't have provoked him. He's your father, Diana. Be the bigger person." Not one of them mentioned the slap. Not one asked if I was okay. Then Carlos texted, "You really ruined everything. Vanessa's furious. Mom says you owe Dad an apology." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked his number. For the next few days, silence replaced the noise. Until it didn't. On Thursday morning, someone knocked. I opened the door to find Carlos and Vanessa standing there like they'd been cast in a commercial for entitlement. Vanessa wore white jeans and held a measuring tape. Carlos had a coffee cup and that same smug smirk. "We just need a few quick measurements," he said. For what I asked, though, I already knew. "Our furniture," Vanessa replied, stepping forward. "We're moving in after the honeymoon. Mom said you'd agreed." I laughed once, short, sharp, hollow. "Get out, don't make this harder than it has to be," Carlos said. "You're single, you don't need all this space." The audacity burned hotter than the slap ever did. "You need to leave now." I closed the door before they could speak again. The lock clicked final and satisfying. By evening, my phone buzzed with a notification: "New group chat." Diana's Penthouse transfer. 12 members. The first message was a photo of paint swatches. The second, from my mother, Carlos and Vanessa moving date, confirmed 2 weeks. For a long time, I just stared at it. Then I typed, "This isn't happening." Seconds later, my father called. His voice roared through the speaker. "You ungrateful brat, after everything we've done for you." Like what I said, quietly. "What exactly have you done for me?" He didn't answer. He just hung up. That night, I sat in the dark with a glass of water, not wine, watching the city lights blink like signals from another life. I thought about every time I'd given in, every guilt trip I'd swallowed, every time I'd mistaken manipulation for love. I realized something brutal and freeing. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted ownership. The next Sunday, I showed up for dinner out of habit or maybe curiosity. The house smelled the same as it always did, garlic lemon polish control. My mother greeted me like nothing had happened. My father didn't. He waited until halfway through the meal to slam his hand on the table. "Enough," he barked. "Carlos gets your keys next weekend or you're out of this family." My mother's fork clinked softly against her plate. "It's what's best for everyone." Carlos smirked, eyes glinting. I folded my napkin, placed it down, and stood. "Then consider this dinner my last." No one stopped me. No one even called after me. Outside, the night air felt sharp and alive. I drove home without music, without tears. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was clean. They thought they'd broken me. They didn't realize they'd just freed me. I didn't sleep that night. The slap, the dinner, the silence, it all looped like static. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, anger cooled into focus. If they wanted to take what I'd built, I'd show them what that really meant. At 7 a.m., I called Jasmine, my best friend and attorney. "It's time," I said. "Time for what?" "For me to stop playing the quiet daughter." By noon, we were sitting in her office, coffee untouched between us. I laid out my phone, my laptop, a USB drive full of messages, screenshots, voicemails, every insult and demand they'd thrown my way. Jasmine scrolled through, her face hardening. "This is harassment," she said. "You have enough for a restraining order." "Not yet," I replied, "but I will." Next, I called Marcus, my closest ally at work, the one person who'd seen my family's performance at the wedding. We met at a small cafe downtown. The air smelled like rain and espresso. "You were right," he said before I even sat down. "Carlos is bragging at the office. He told HR he's moving into your place. He's been using your name to get a promotion." I felt the heat rise in my chest. "He used my name, your reputation," Marcus said. "And he has no idea you own part of Westview through your holding company." That sentence shifted everything. My brother worked for a company I quietly helped build. He thought I was just another employee. He had no idea I owned 30% of it. "Good," I said. Let him keep talking. The next day, I contacted my building's head of security, a man named Reynolds, who owed me a favor. Within hours, he sent me footage Carlos and Vanessa trying to enter my penthouse while I was out. Vanessa even posed for a selfie by the door, tagging the location as future home. Jasmine nearly laughed when I showed her. "They're making your case for you." "Exactly," I said. "I'm done reacting. It's my turn to move first." That night, I created 3 folders on my computer, legal financial evidence. Each one filled quickly, recordings, letters, screenshots, bank transfers. Every lie they told became a receipt. Every guilt trip became a weapon. By Friday, Jasmine had drafted cease and desist papers and a preliminary restraining order. Marcus pulled financial records showing I'd covered loans my father never repaid. Every document drew a clearer picture they'd used me for years, and I'd let them. Until now. When Jasmine asked what came next, I didn't hesitate. "Invite them here. All of them. They want a family meeting. They'll get one." Her eyebrows rose. "You sure you're ready for that?" "I've been ready my whole life." Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. I looked out at the city from my glass walls, buildings glowing against the storm, the world I'd built without their help, and felt something settle inside me. Calm. Absolute. "They thought I'd break," I said quietly, but I was just getting started. Friday came with rain, the kind that blurred the skyline and made the whole city hum. I wore a white blouse, black slacks, hair pulled low. Calm. Controlled. Unshakable. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw umbrellas, formal coats, and familiar faces already set in scorn. My father stood front and center with a manila envelope. My mother clutched paint swatches like this was still about decor. Carlos, smug as ever, held his phone, probably recording his victory. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Come in." They filed through the hall, shaking off rain, murmuring about the view. My father looked around, nodding. "You've done well for yourself," he said. "Now it's time to do right by your family." "Funny," I said. "I thought right and wrong were the same for everyone." I gestured toward the dining area. 4 people waited behind me: Jasmine Marcus, my financial advisor, and Reynolds, head of security. They looked sharp, quiet, professional. The atmosphere changed. My father's smile vanished. "What is this family meeting?" I said. "You wanted one." My mother's voice turned sugar-sweet. "Diana, we didn't mean for things to get ugly. Just sign the transfer papers so we can move forward." "Of course," I replied, handing her a blue folder. "Start by reading this." They opened it, pages of ownership documents, deeds, corporate filings. My father frowned. "What is this nonsense?" "Proof," I said evenly, "that this isn't just my penthouse. I own the building, and 30% of Westview, the company that employs your son." Carlos froze, his expression flickering from arrogance to panic. "You're lying." Marcus stepped forward. "Not lying. Confirmed through SEC filings and HR records. She's your boss's boss." The color drained from my brother's face. My father's fists tightened. "You think this scares me?" Jasmine pressed play on her phone. The room filled with my father's recorded voice, his shouting his threats, my mother's cold commands, every syllable sharp and undeniable. "This recording," Jasmine said, "is already filed with the court along with a restraining order." My mother's lips trembled. "You wouldn't do that to your own family. You did it to yourselves," I answered. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. I watched them, all 3 of them, realize the power balance had shifted forever. Carlos lunged forward, face twisted. "You think you're better than us?" Reynolds stepped in front of me, calm but firm. "Sir, I'd suggest you leave." I didn't flinch. I looked at my father. "You called me ungrateful, but I paid your mortgage, your debts, and your son's tuition. You drained me dry and still called it love." He swallowed hard. "We're family, no," I said quietly. "We're a pattern I just broke." I opened the door. "You'll all leave now. If you contact me again, everything in those folders becomes public. Carlos, your company, will know the full story. Mom, your friends will know what you did. Dad, your reputation will vanish faster than you can rebuild it." My mother's mascara streaked. My father's shoulders slumped. Carlos glared, but the fight was gone. One by one, they walked out into the rain. Vanessa lingered at the doorway, eyes soft. I didn't know she whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Then start being different." When the elevator doors closed, I stood still, breathing in the sound of thunder rolling over glass. Jasmine touched my arm. "You okay?" "I'm finally fine," I said. We watched the rain streak down the windows, washing away the last traces of them. The storm outside was loud, but inside it was silent, clean earned mine. They thought they could control me. They didn't realize they'd just taught me how to win. The next morning, the city gleamed like it had been scrubbed clean overnight. I woke up to sunlight instead of tension, quiet instead of chaos. My phone lay face down on the counter. No calls, no guilt, no manipulation waiting behind a glowing screen. Jasmine called around noon. "Restraining orders approved," she said. "They can't come near you or contact you again." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Then I guess it's finally over." "It's over," she confirmed. News traveled fast. By midweek, Carlos had been terminated. HR discovered he'd falsified records, used my name, and shared confidential information. Marcus texted, "He's out for good." My parents stayed silent, but their absence felt lighter than any apology ever could. I spent that evening boxing up the last remnants of them old photos, inherited trinkets, the illusion that I ever needed their approval. When the boxes were sealed, the apartment felt larger, brighter, like it had exhaled with me. A week later, I signed documents creating a scholarship for women in tech without family support. The check wasn't charity, it was closure. Turning my pain into something that could outlast their cruelty felt like the only justice that mattered. That night, I stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the skyline shimmer against the fading storm clouds. For years, I'd fought to be seen. Now I realized I didn't need their eyes on me at all. The city looked alive, new untouched. And so was I. I used to believe family meant loyalty, no matter the cost. But real loyalty doesn't demand your silence or your soul, it respects your boundaries. I didn't lose a family that night. I lost a prison built out of guilt. Now, every sunrise hitting these glass walls reminds me peace isn't given, it's earned. If you've ever had to stand alone against people who were supposed to love, you know this: you're not weak for walking away. You're brave for saving yourself. Hit like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more like this.